Okay, so let's talk a little bit about hook sizes. Each of your hooks is going to have a letter and a corresponding number. For example, this hook here is an M 9mm. So you can see that it's a lot larger versus this one here is a B 2mm, and you can see that the size of the hook is much smaller. So that's going to be for smaller patterns, more intricate designs, possibly doing some lace and using crochet thread. Generally, I like to use the H 5mm, especially if I'm just doing either learning or making a scarf, a granny square, a bucket hat, sometimes blankets. This one here is typically my favorite. In fact, I've worn out the lettering that is on here, but I'll admit it kind of wore out in like a day or two. So when you are shopping for hooks, these ones here are very affordable and wonderful, especially for a beginner. However, I'm gonna let you know that after a while, it's gonna start to poke in here. And this piece here will eventually, at least it did for me, cause some numbing to start going up the finger. So I was really uncomfortable with that, and I didn't see it as a long-term good hook. I did try these ones for a while. They have a good comfort grip, which I thought was important. A larger grip, which is I find really, really good, especially when you're crocheting for long periods of time. And it didn't really dig in here. You have the number and letter right here written nice for you. And even better is that they light up. I thought, how fantastic. Except I think I used this light maybe once or twice. Really, it was too flexible, and it starts to pull in here, and it just, every single one other than this one broke. So I was not a fan of those, but when I discovered these, huge fan. The nice rounded edge does allow so it doesn't really poke in here, and it's not hitting any nerves or muscle that I don't like. And it has a nice, soft, comfortable grip for my thumb and my fingers. I can hold these really nice and easy. Now, how do you hold your hook? I do mine pretty much like this. So I have it coming across the fingers. My thumb is always on the same side as the hook portion, so that gives me the control to do what I need with it. I have seen some people who hold it like a pen and they go at their work like this. Please find whatever works for you. You are the artist, you are the creator. These teeny tiny hooks, these are just really for micro crochet. Honestly, I've never used them. I'm too afraid to do micro crochet. It's basically crocheting with thread, and I don't think that I want to do that. Okay, just a few other gadgets that you may find you need eventually. This is a stitch counter. So if you have a pattern that says, do this stitch 15 times, you may do that. I just count. If it says complete this, do like row 3 to 15, have 18 stitches, I will use this. Row 3, row 4, row 5, row 6, row. As soon as I finish a row, I will click it. Otherwise, I am losing count. Stitch markers. Again, these are basically if it says that you want to do a round and you don't want to lose your spot, or on stitch 4, you're going to do this, so mark stitch 4. I didn't really use these until I was a little bit more advanced in my crochet, so please don't rush out and purchase anything right away. Other items that you may need, will be scissors and tapestry needle. Please forgive mine, this package owes me nothing. So generally at the end of your crochet, you will be left with a little tail, maybe 2, maybe more, and you'll need to weave those in. I like a larger tapestry needle. I do have another one as well that has an even larger hook for usually when I do plushies, or I use a blanket yarn or something, just something so that the eye is larger so that my yarn work will get through it. Okay, now that we've discussed that, I'm gonna clean up here and tell you a little bit about yarn. Generally, you're gonna look for a yarn like this. This one here is Loops and Threads. They're Soft Classic Edition. This is 252 yards or 5 ounces of yarn in meters and grams. So this means that if you're doing a blanket and it says that you need 1,200 yards, you're just going to divide 1,200 by 252 to see how many balls. Generally going to be 4 or 5 if that's what you're looking for. So we're going to swirl it around here. This color is limeade, and the weight of the yarn is 4. That typically just means the thickness of your yarn. So something like this is generally a super bulky 6 weight. You can also find a 2, which will be thinner and create more lacy projects. For knitting, they tell you what your gauge would be here. And for crocheting, they recommend a 5.5 millimeter I-9 hook. So for that, I would just search through all my hooks. I have a 6.5, not a 5.5, but I would grab the one that I need and use that. However, most of your projects are going to tell you what hook to use. So though it's recommended at using a 5.5, if you want to use a 5, or if the pattern says to use a 5, that is absolutely fine. Where it really helps though, I have found, is a yarn like this. So this is also loops and threads. Now this is their facets. This yarn here, there's 279 yards, so it's actually longer than this one. However, this says to use a 6 millimeter hook, and I will tell you that that really did make a difference. So when I was doing that, let me just show you my different work. This one here, I used I'm gonna move this for 1 second. This piece here was a 6 millimeter, and it made it very light and lacy. It was really easy to work with, and it gave me a good flowy item versus this item that I crocheted with a 5 millimeter. And so it's a little bit tighter and not as loose of a fabric as the last one that I showed you. So that is just a small, very subtle difference as to what your hook sizes can do for you. So it really depends on what you're making and how you want it to turn out. I really did like this one. This one has such a nice, you can throw it around. You know what it feels like? This one feels like you've passed it down from grandma to mom and now it's yours. Like this one has a very nice, soft, broken in feel to it. I love both, to be honest. Okay, getting back to it. When you're starting to crochet, one of the very important things to consider is the color of your yarn. By that, I mean that this yarn is beautiful. This is a color phasing yarn, so it'll actually slowly change as I'm using it, and there's glitter throughout. What's not to love? Except for the beginner crocheter, it can be really, really difficult for you to see your stitches and know where to put your hook. Now, moving over to something like a nice red, it's a lot easier to see your stitches than the ones with the glitter. And also the glitter can tend to tangle if you do need to frog it, which is what we refer to as when you rip it out. Now, one of the possible worst items to crochet with is anything dark, especially when you're learning. Please stay away from dark. It may be really tempting to use some of the navy blues and the dark violets and the black, but look at this. You cannot see these stitches. it is near impossible. You have to get it a light so close to the item in order to see these stitches. Once you get more used to it, it becomes easier, but please don't try to learn on black. Again, it may be tempting to use a chunky yarn and a big fat hook. But I'll tell you right now, as good as that may be, one, this yarn snaps very easily, which will get frustrating. Two, you won't be able to gauge your tension properly. I wouldn't recommend learning this way, okay? When you're learning, please pick up a nice, affordable, light colored yarn that really lets you see those stitches. See how you can see that it's a nice looking braid? This is what you want. For someone who's learning, this is so important. Okay, so I think I have covered all the basics. Let's get to learning some stitches. Okay, so you may notice that I have my yarn on a little twirler here. That's because I prefer to use my yarn from the outside of the ball. That means that this piece is usually tucked in and you just find it and pull it out, and I crochet from this. That means my ball will generally bounce all over the place if I don't have it on a yarn spinner or one of the hanging yarn spinners, which is really nice. Other ways people do it will be to dig from the center, find the beginning of the yarn, which it's in there, pull it out and use that. When you crochet that way, you're basically going to create a small hole and your yarn will almost deflate. What I don't like about that, even though it stops the bouncing, is that eventually you have what I refer to as a yarn vomit, where the inside will spill out all over your table and all you have are knots that you need to take care of. And I don't know about you, but that is not relaxing, which is my ultimate goal when it comes to crochet. Okay, so first things first, you're going to take your hook and hold it with a nice comfortable grip with your thumb on the same side as where the hook is. We don't want to be holding it backwards like this. Although I have seen people who hold their hook more like a pen or pencil, and that is okay too, so long as it's a grip that is comfortable for you. We're going to take our yarn. I drape it across my fingers, and then I wrap it around 3 of them to create this X. I pinch the X and remove my fingers. Personally, I make my hole a little bit smaller just by pulling this tail piece. And then I bring the tail down behind the loop and I use my ring finger and my pinky to hold it. This creates a little like no sign. So at this point, I'm going to take my hook and go over the loop and under the tail. Over the loop and under the tail. At this point, all I have to do is pull up and release that X from my pointer and my thumb. And when I do that, I put a nice loop onto my hook. That is how you start your crochet. We're going to loop on like that. So I'm just going to pull this out so that I can show you again. The good thing about crochet is that it's all loops, so if you do make a mistake, we just rip it out, which we call frogging, and start again. So we're going to loop around our fingers and pinch that X. Take your fingers out. I pull my tail a little bit, bring that down, and create a no sign. So I'm currently pinching here and I'm pinching here. This finger is kind of just along for the ride. I bring my hook over the loop and under the tail, and then I release the X and I pull up. That gives me a loop on my hook. Now at this stage, please make sure that your loop has a little gap. There should be a little bit of space here. You don't want your loop to be too tight. By that, I mean, if I pull my loop, and it's called a slip stitch because you can slip that knot to be tighter or looser. But if I pull this all the way to the top where it's really small, see how my hook is currently larger than the loop? So how am I going to crochet and get my hook through that loop? I'm not going to be able to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my loop just a little bit larger. I should have a tiny amount of space there and it should flow up and down. When I hold my yarn, again, over the 3 fingers and then behind the index and down, I should be able to actually fit my hook in and out really easily. Okay, so that's the tension that you're looking for. Now, once you have this and you're ready to get to the next step, we're gonna hold so that the hook is facing away from the yarn. I have it, again, I'm gonna show you, across all your fingers. Put the index in front and bring the yarn down. This creates some tension in that yarn for you. I use my pinky and ring finger to hold that tail for more tension. And then I pinch right here so that I can kind of have some control over that knot and make sure that my yarn is not going to be too tight or too loose. So the thing about crocheting in the beginning is not realizing how many different spots you need to put your fingers. And eventually your thumb will move and you won't need to be pinching the tail anymore, but you'll see that in a little. Okay, so we're going to hold the hook away from us, away from the yarn, and all you're going to do is go around the yarn like that, okay? Just a little circle. This is called a yarn over. At this stage, you flip the hook, and once you pull down, that hook and yarn will flow right through that loop that you had. That is your first chain. So when an item says chain 10, chain 20, chain 150, you are going to do that many times. So again, I'm going to hold my yarn with some tension, nothing too strong, just a light tension. I'm not cutting off any circulation, it's just straight. Best way to put it. Like a guitar string, it's still going to play. Okay, so then this finger, middle or ring finger and pinky to hold that. And I'm going to go again, around, turn, pull through. Yarn over, pull through. Yarn over, pull through. Now, at this stage, I want to express that it is very, very important to let your hook do the work. By that I mean, notice how this yarn isn't moving. I am not holding here and bringing my yarn around, okay? That is more of a knitting technique, and I have seen people try to learn how to crochet and they try to do that. You're holding and the hook is moving, okay? Hold and move. It becomes a nice even flow. Turn and turn. This hand will flip, and then we bring that through. The hook is designed that when it faces this way, it kind of has the shape of the loop so that it can go in and out with ease. If your work is too tight, you will find that you have a hard time getting that hook through. If you want your loops to be that small, change to a smaller size hook. If your hook loops are too big, you will have the opposite where your work will look very loose and kind of messy, to be honest. See how the difference is there? So you don't want to be pulling up on your loop. Remember, it's a slip stitch, so that loop will move. Don't want to pull up on the loop and then bring it through. I mean, it'll work, but it's going to create a mess. And on the opposite side, creating it to be too tight, in the future, you have to crochet into these stitches. And as you go, each one will get slightly tighter, especially if you've already made them too tight. It's going to need some space. So it's going to pull some of the yarn from the other stitch to create room. And then you'll get to this stitch and you'll be like, I can't get it through. And it's just going to be a mess. If you do get it through, one of the things that can happen is as you're pulling it back through of a really tight stitch is you can actually end up snagging some of the other yarn from the chain. And you'll say, well, my hook doesn't even move anymore. I can't make this loop any bigger or smaller. And that's because you actually have just half of the yarn strand on there and that you've pinched it. Another thing that I have seen, unfortunately, is getting a twist in the yarn. You know, you put it down, you go get a drink, you come back, you don't even realize you've done it, and you just start crocheting again. And you think you're on a roll, you finish it off, you look at it, and you notice that there's something just a little bit wonky in your chain. You notice that like right here, it turns. See how it looks a bit more like a dash? Like it's just a one, that's your yarn twist. So you really want to try to keep your chain straight and even. So we're just going to start again. Bring your yarn across, fingers out, smaller X for me. Pinch, over, under, grab, and up. This point, I am going to tuck my finger under my yarn, pinch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. 4, 5, 6. So that is what a chain 6 would look like. So you see how it's a nice looking braid? That is what you want. You want your stitches to be even. You want them all to kind of look uniform and the same. Another thing is that this is the right side of your work and this is the wrong side. Now you will often do a pattern and hear right side facing you, wrong side facing you. That's what that means. They don't mean right as in the right versus right and left. It's the correct side and the incorrect side. So this side, the right side, you'll notice looks like a whole bunch of little V's. These little V's are your stitches. Whereas the wrong side actually looks like little dashes. So that's one way of telling if your chain is the right side or the wrong side facing you. Now, one of the other things is you'll notice that my hook comes in from the front. So the right side, the wrong side, and my hook goes in this way. If I were to put my work down, oops-a-daisies, come along and flip it to this side, I'm actually going to create a flip in my chain where I will have a right side and wrong side on the same side, and it'll cause kind of a twist here. And when you go back to crochet your work later, you may just notice a little something there. So try to maintain it always the same and even. So from here, I'm gonna put my hook into the front of the work towards the yarn, so it'll face that way. And then again, flip so that the hook is facing away from the yarn. Yarn over, turn, and pull through. That allows me to continue my chain with ease. Now again, let's say that you're crocheting a blanket and it asks for 150 chains, and you get to like 89 and you lose count. Was I on 89, 79, 86? I don't know. In order to count those chains, what you're going to do is you're going to look for the V. So this is your chain one. That's 2, 3, 4. So each one, you're going to see the little V there. That's what you're going to be counting. Another way is you can kind of turn it and see that there's like some ridges. So I just kind of go with the one strand up top. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Basically, you're looking for this piece. That is one. That is another one. That is another one. So once you get going, that's actually where you are going to be putting your hook as well. So once you start crocheting into your chain, you look for the little space that's right there, and that's where your hook will go in. Then you're going to look for the next little space or that little ridge that's above, and that's where your hook will go in. So you'll just have the one strand going across the top. And then right here, hopefully you can see that little hole. That's where your hook will go in. Again, see how nice and easy it flows in and out of the chain? That's the goal. You want it to be not too tight, but not too loose, but your hook should be able to slide in and out with ease. Once you have a nice braid that looks like this, congratulations, you have created a pasta noodle, which is your first project. Please continue to work through this chain to make your pasta noodle as long as you can. From here, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, turn that hook and pull through. If it's too tight, just loosen that loop a little, but not too much, and pull through. Yarn over, pull through. And notice that now my grip has actually changed. I meant to mention that before. I apologize. So from here, I'm now holding here, and now I don't need to use my pinky and my ring finger to hold the tail. Now this, my thumb and my middle finger hold and pull, so that as you're going, you're just going to slowly move those fingers up your work, but your pointer and that yarn will always stay in the same position. And what you're basically doing is using the hook and fingers to create enough of a pull that you have a space there that you want that yarn to go through, and the hook. So please let me know how you enjoyed my tutorial. I am open to any and all feedback. I would love to know if you want me to go faster or slower, do more or less repetition.
literally anything like that. My goal here is to get you to love to crochet so that you can find a nice relaxing way to open up your creativity and provide yourself with a little bit of self-care while also making absolutely beautiful garments that you can keep for yourself, give away as gifts, anything like that. Maybe sell and start a little business of your own. I think crochet is a wonderful art, and I just really want to spread the love. So please subscribe, please follow along, and we'll see you in the next tutorial for how to learn a single crochet.